Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in today's video we're going to do another upgrade or enhancement to the 20-ton hydraulic press. But before we do that, I want to do a quick couple little comments on my last video, the video dealing with mounting device on my welding table. Got a lot of good comments on that, and I actually went back and looked at Chuck's video again and realized that he put that receiver on his welding table, and he had several different implements on tubes that would go in that receiver. So he was able to use that, or he is able to use that receiver for multiple tools. But what I want to mention today is several folks commented that if I put that little milled groove on the back of or on the other side of the tube that goes in the receiver, I could pull the vise out of the receiver, turn it upside down, and store it that way. In the video, I talked about cleaning up the shelf underneath to store it there. But here's a couple of images of, first off, here's one of milling that groove. And I actually milled a groove on all three of the other sides. And here's a picture of the vise in its normal position. But should it be in the way of something I want to put on top of the welding table, I can pull it out and turn it 180 degrees and insert it like this. If I've got an item that I need to hold vertically, I can turn it to the left side and install it like this, or turn it to the right side and install it like this. So I appreciate all the comments. I don't always respond back to every comment, but I do read them. I read every comment on every video. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to do to the hydraulic press today. A little over a year ago, about 14 months ago, I replaced the jack that come on this press. It was a 20-ton hydraulic jack. I replaced it with this air over hydraulic jack. That has served me well. I have thoroughly enjoyed using the press much more without having to crank that handle up and down by having the air over hydraulic. But in that video as well, another viewer made a comment that has kind of stuck in the back of my mind for a right good while. He mentioned that he put a foot switch on his. This comes with this valve up here that of course still requires the use of a hand. And so oftentimes when you're pressing something, you need a third hand. You need to be able to hold the item in place. As you also have seen in my video from quite some time back, these magnetic drifts, which help tremendously in holding your workpiece in place. But there still comes time when you need both hands down here. And that viewer made the comment that he put a foot switch on his. And like I say, that's been kind of in the back of my mind for a long time, that a foot switch, pneumatic foot switch on here, I think would be a good addition. But I wanted to keep the hand operated as well. So I got to thinking, what's it going to take to have both the hand switch and the foot switch on here. Nothing really complicated. I just had to think through it a little bit. Let me grab the foot switch right quick. The reason I hadn't added one earlier was because I honestly just didn't know what kind of foot switch to get. Seemed like some of them I look at would be very expensive. Others would be extremely cheap. Some had two inlets or two ports on them. Others had three. And I'm sure what that was is that you could have pressure in both directions. This one was actually in a group of tools that I'll be doing a video on sometime in the near future. But I've got a good section of my workbench over there is covered up with stuff that I picked up from a situation I'm not quite ready to go into detail yet on, but I picked up a lot of new tools, some very old nice tools, machinist tools, and this foot switch was in there. And so that brought back the idea of putting the foot switch on here. So that's what we're going to do today. But first thing I want to do, or what I come up with in my head that I've got to do, is the supply, which is up here. It needs to split and go two ways. One will go to the hand valve, and then the other will go to the foot switch. So what I've put together already, up here on the feed, I've got some quick disconnects, and some of you are going to say, man, you got way too many quick disconnects in there. These are actually a whole lot easier to find and buy than the swivel connections are. And since this quick disconnect's already in there, I will just leave that in place. Now, this one here will be the feed to the foot switch, and then this one will be the line to the hand. So I'll still have the hand over here and the foot switch on that. But what we need to turn to now is we need to remove this feed, current hand feed that's over here on the pneumatic over hydraulic. These are all quarter NPT fittings. I'll use my adjustable here just to kind of hold that in place. Alright, sorry, I may have had to step in front of the camera there for a second. Alright, just like we did the two-way feed, we need to do a two-way inlet over here. So again, these are some quick connects that I've already got made up. Two quick connects with a 1/4 inch NPT nipple. We'll put a little Teflon tape on that. Okay, now we got two outlets up here on the supply line, and we got two inlets for our air over hydraulic. So what we need to do is fix this so it'll connect to one of them, and also plumb up the foot switch. So I'm going to turn over here to the vise and zoom you in just a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Okay, I'm over here at the Wilton vise now. I'm just going to use this as a workstation to make up the hoses. And what I did on the hand operated one, I simply took a pick and removed all that leftover Teflon tape from the previous fitting. So we're going to retape it now. And we'll be putting a quick disconnect, the male side, onto it. And I've got that started. I should be able to hold it in the vise. Not a whole lot of hard clamping on it, of course. Alright, that should have the hand hose worked up. This end, of course, will go in at the supply, be in the same general area it was originally, and this will go into the feed in the air over hydraulic. Now the next thing we need to do is plumb up the lines to the foot switch. This has two inlets and some trial and error over at the workbench. They're labeled 1 and 2. 2 is the supply line in. And when you put air into 2, it's a dead stop with the foot pedal up. When you press it down, the air comes out of 1. So this top one, we need basically a short elbow or a short nipple and an elbow to get that vertically. So I'll take one of my close nipples. I'll go ahead and tape up both sides of this. Alright, we'll put the single close nipple in the top, and then we'll put this elbow onto it. That'll give us the female out as well. And doing stuff like this when you got multiple joints, I always like to get them all started and tighten them together. That way you're not putting undue pressure on any particular one. And I'm just going to use the vise to hold that enough that I can turn that to the vertical position. Now this elbow that'll go there will need to stand up just a little bit higher for hose clearance. So what we're going to do on that is use 2 short nipples, close nipples, a union in between. And come to think of it, I may have a single nipple a little bit longer. It's not brass, but it should work fine. Let's see if that will be long enough. Nope, by the time that tightens down, that will not give clearance between the two. So we'll use, as planned, 2 close nipples. We use a union to connect the two, and then another close nipple. And then our elbow on the top, or on the end. And you see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 connections there, but by tightening them all at the same time, we're putting the same amount of torque on each joint. And these don't have to be extremely tight. You can feel, once you've done this a few times, you get the feel of it. And of course it would be a different feel you're looking for if this was in galvanized versus cast aluminum and brass. So there's our connections up from the foot switch. Next thing we'll need to do is plumb the hoses. I have some 6-foot hoses here. One end will have the male quick connect to go to the supply side. Alright, the other end of the hoses, again, when you start a project like this, have plenty of Teflon tape and be ready to make up a lot of joints. That doesn't matter which one I start with, but I think they'll be easier to get to if I'll Start with this inside one. Alright, I misspoke over there at the vise. The number 1 on here on the foot switch is the supply. So I've taken that line, just put a piece of tape around it with an S on the end. That will of course set on the floor. I'll get all my cables or all my hoses arranged once I know where a good spot for the foot switch to mount is. As I was looking at this, getting ready to put it back together, I noticed something. On this hand valve that came with the air-over hydraulic kit, this is actually an air filter. So I need to put that in line here instead of just on the hand control. So I'm going to do that without much narration. Be careful what you run your finger across. That is probably a 1/4 inch long piece of aluminum shard right there. That just went up that thumb. I'll be right back. Alright, after stabbing myself and repairing my wound, I didn't bother to turn the camera back on, but I gave a little bit more thought to the way I wanted to handle that filter. And instead of putting it down here, I'm going to put this joint back together like it was. Now up here at the supply, what I've done is put the filter in place up here. I rearranged this plumbing just a little bit. I took the filter apart, cleaned it out, and installed it up here. That way I don't have quite so much sticking out back here. Alright, so let's take our supply line from the foot switch, which is this one. Alright, and that can come to one side of the supply for the press itself. Now the foot switch should work. And it does, and I can tell you it's getting a whole lot more air now that I've cleaned out the filter up here. Actually, that tag on the side of that says replace every 2 to 3 months. Well, I don't use mine near enough to replace it every 2 or 3 months, but it probably sure needs to be cleaned more often than every 14 months, which is how long this has been installed. Alright, so now we've got the hand switch, hand control up here in the supply, and put it in the other side of the press. So we've got hand or foot. And it's also obvious that there's more air going through the foot valve than there is this little valve here. I'll get all my hoses secured and tied in place once I decide where the best place is to mount this foot switch. It's got some mounting ears on it, So I'll mount that down in place, then get my hoses kind of secured up a little bit. Folks, I realize this video was a bit elementary to most of you. It was just a matter of putting together some brass fittings for airline. But the thought behind doing this was that not only can you have a hand control, also a foot control and line. And so this was just my means of splitting it at the supply and splitting it at the feed into the jack, and then plumbing the lines in between. The only thing else I would add to this video is if you start a project like this, have plenty of 1/4 inch NPT fittings or whatever size fits your air system. Mine is a 1/2 inch NPT feeding into here, but everything else is 1/4 inch. So you guys take care, and I'll see you on the next video.